Title: Why so many inmates fear the walls of Angola prison. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. The land that never forgot. Before you even step inside Angola prison, the land itself tells a story, one older, darker, and more painful than the concrete walls that now sit on top of it. Officially known as the Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola is the largest maximum security prison in the United States. But long before it became a prison, it was a massive slave plantation. And that history never really went away, it simply changed faces. Located on 18,000 acres of farmland, surrounded on three sides by the Mississippi River and miles of swamps, Angola feels like its own world, isolated, trapped in time, and almost impossible to escape from. Even today, many inmates refer to it as the farm, the same name used when enslaved people were forced to work the same land during the 1800s. For thousands of incarcerated men, Angola isn't just a prison. It's a reminder of a past that continues to echo in every field, corridor, and cell block. The drive toward the gates. The journey into Angola sets the tone long before the prison walls appear. Visitors describe a long, silent road, miles of open fields, and an eerie quiet that feels more like entering restricted military territory than coming to a state correctional facility. On either side of the road, endless farmland. Cotton, soybeans, corn, cattle. Inmates labor in those same fields under armed guards on horseback, wearing uniforms that many say look hauntingly similar to what enslaved laborers once wore on this same soil. For new inmates, seeing that for the first time feels like a warning. This is not just a prison. This is a system. A place people don't leave. Angola holds more men serving life without parole than any other prison in America. Inside its walls, many inmates say they are sent here to die. It's a sentence not only of incarceration, but of time stopping completely. When Angola was first built, its purpose wasn't rehabilitation. It was containment, control, labor, survival. And for many, those goals haven't changed. Arrival, the reality hits. When a new inmate steps off the transport bus, he's immediately hit with the smell of the fields, the distant shouting of guards, and the sound of clanking gates closing behind him. First stop, classification and intake. This is where officers decide where a man will live, work, and serve his time. Some are sent to general population units. Others go to high-security tiers. Some end up in Camp J, the most feared disciplinary camp, now closed but still spoken about in whispers. Inmates often say this is the moment you realize Angola isn't designed for comfort, and it isn't designed for hope. It's designed for endurance. Inside the housing units, the cell blocks vary, but many parts of Angola feel old, humid, and claustrophobic. Some units date back to the early 1900s. Concrete floors worn down by generations of men. Rusted bars. Paint peeling from walls. Overcrowding has improved in recent years, but Angola still holds thousands of inmates in conditions that officers themselves admit are extremely difficult to control. And then there's the heat. Louisiana summers are unforgiving. Temperatures inside cells can reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit or more, with inmates describing nights where they sleep on the floor because it's the only way to breathe. Fans are rare. Air conditioning doesn't exist in most units. Medical reports have documented heat exhaustion, dehydration, heat-related illness, chronic worsening of respiratory conditions. And for elderly inmates, who make up a large portion of Angola, heat can mean survival or death. Field labor, the most controversial part. Perhaps the most well-known and most feared part of Angola is the field labor. Inmates, many of them serving life sentences, work long hours under direct supervision of guards on horseback carrying rifles. The tasks are physical, repetitive, and often grueling. Cutting grass with small hand tools. Harvesting crops. Moving cattle. Clearing brush. Critics, former inmates, and human rights groups have repeatedly compared this system to the prison's plantation past. Angola officials argue the work helps inmate discipline and reduces violence. But to the men working in the fields, it feels like something else entirely. A reminder that here, freedom is a concept that exists only outside the gate. A place built on power and fear. What makes Angola so feared is not just the structure, the heat, the isolation, or the labor. It's the culture, shaped by decades of violence, riots, abuse allegations, and survival instincts. Older inmates tell younger ones, "This place will change you. Either you get hard or it gets you." Every man in Angola learns quickly. Who controls the tiers? Which officers show mercy? Which units to avoid? When to speak? When to stay silent? Because at Angola, silence is often the difference between peace and danger, violence, power, and the code of survival. Inside Angola prison, fear isn't just an emotion, it's a system. Every hallway, every field, every locked door has a story. And behind all of it is one truth inmates repeat over and over. At Angola, safety is never guaranteed. While Louisiana officials have made improvements in recent years, Angola's long history of violence, power struggles, and deadly confrontations still shapes daily life inside the prison. The scars of the past remain, and the reality of the present is just as complex. The shadow of Angola's violent history. For decades, Angola was considered one of the most violent prisons in America. Riots, murders, stabbings, abuse allegations, brutal punishments. One event is still talked about among older inmates. The 1950s and 1960s dark years, where violence between inmates and staff was so frequent that Angola became nationally known as the bloodiest prison in the South. Back then, gang structures, racial divisions, and unregulated power made survival a daily negotiation. Although violence has decreased significantly, the trauma of those years still hangs over the prison. As one former guard once put it, at Angola history never dies. It just hides. The cell blocks, power in the shadows. Inside the main cell blocks, the social structure is complex and unforgiving. While officials run the prison on paper, inmates run the daily rhythm of life. Reputation matters. Respect matters. And so does your past. Cells are packed with men serving life without parole, multiple life sentences, decades-long terms for violent crimes. Most inmates know they're never going home. And when freedom is not an option, power inside the walls becomes the currency. Fights can start for reasons outsiders may never understand. Disrespectful eye contact. Taking someone's seat in the day room. Debt over a commissary item. Conflicts carried from the street into the prison. Officers intervene when they can, but with thousands of inmates in such an enormous facility, control is a constant struggle. The Angola gangs. Angola is home to some of the most entrenched prison gangs in the United States, groups with decades-long histories and chapters across multiple states. While officers attempt to separate known gang affiliates, the prison's massive size and limited staffing make complete separation impossible. Many inmates describe Angola as a pressure cooker, where tension can escalate fast. However, Angola is not dominated by gang culture the way some newer supermax prisons are. Its danger is older, deeper, rooted in the unique population of long-term lifers who police their own structure. Here, older inmates often serve as stabilizers. They've survived decades and they enforce their own unwritten code. Don't bring heat on yourself or on us. The Camp J legacy. One of the most feared parts of Angola's past was Camp J, the disciplinary segregation unit used for years to isolate the most violent or uncontrollable inmates. Although Camp J officially closed in 2018 after investigations into poor conditions, the stories still remain powerful warnings. Inmates sent to Camp J described 23-hour-a-day lockdown, extreme heat, limited medical care, minimal human contact, constant psychological pressure. Some men who spent time there say those months felt like living in a box where time doesn't move. Even after closure, Camp J's reputation continues to dominate inmate conversations. The Angola trustee system, a different kind of control. Angola is one of the last large prisons in America to maintain a trustee-run internal labor system. Trustee inmates, those considered reliable, help run much of the prison's daily operations. They work as field bosses, kitchen supervisors, law clerks, carpenters, mechanics, hospital orderlies. This system, while useful for manpower, creates a controversial dynamic. Inmates supervising other inmates. For some, it provides structure and responsibility. For others, it opens the door to abuse of power and favoritism. The dynamic is clear. Some trustees become respected leaders. Others gain power that rivals the officers. This balance has shaped Angola's internal culture for decades. Medical care, a crisis of age and illness. Angola has one of the oldest prison populations in America. Lifers age inside these walls and the prison hospital is constantly full. Common conditions include diabetes, heart disease, advanced arthritis, chronic respiratory illness, age-related mobility issues. While Angola's medical system has improved, investigations have criticized long delays for care, understaffing, limited emergency response, harsh heat conditions affecting sick inmates. For many older prisoners, Angola becomes not just a prison, but the place where they will spend their final years. The psychological toll. What makes Angola truly feared is not only the physical danger, it's the psychological grind. Inmates describe isolation from society, knowing they'll likely die inside the walls, the slow erosion of time, the emotional weight of endless routines. As one former inmate said, Angola doesn't break you in a day, it breaks you in years. Reform and the unfinished fight for humanity. For more than a century, Angola has been known for violence, racial injustice, corruption, and labor practices tied directly to its slave plantation past. But the full story of Angola isn't only about horror, it's also about the ongoing struggle for reform, the dignity of the men who live there, and the national debate over what justice should look like in America's largest maximum security prison. Because while Angola is often described as a place where hope goes to die, the truth is more complicated. The Angola paradox. Angola is a prison where two realities exist at the same time. It is one of the deadliest, most feared prisons in the United States. It is also home to programs that have changed lives, challenged stereotypes, and even inspired global interest in rehabilitation. Inside these gates is a world built on contradiction, cruelty and compassion, brutality and redemption, suffering and survival. The Angola Rodeo, a controversial tradition. One of the most talked about aspects of Angola is its annual prison rodeo, which began in 1965 and still attracts thousands of visitors. To supporters, it represents community connection, positive incentives for inmates, a way for prisoners to earn income. But critics argue the opposite, that the rodeo resembles a spectacle where incarcerated men perform dangerous stunts for entertainment, echoing the prison's darker history of exploitation. Whether seen as hope or harm, the rodeo remains one of Angola's most controversial traditions. Faith, education, and the push for rehabilitation. One of the most significant changes in Angola came in the 1990s, when the Louisiana Department of Corrections partnered with religious groups and educational institutions to introduce new programming inside the prison. Notable programs include the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. Hundreds of inmates have earned bachelor's degrees, associate degrees, ministry training. Graduates are often transferred to other prisons to serve as inmate ministers, bringing counseling, grief support, and guidance to men with no one else to talk to. Literacy and vocational programs. Angola has expanded GD classes, carpentry workshops, automotive repair, welding and electrical trade training. But access isn't equal. Long waiting lists and restrictions mean many inmates never get the chance. Still, for those who do, education becomes a doorway to identity, something beyond their crime or their sentence. Voices from inside, the human side of Angola. One of the most powerful elements of Angola's story is the voices of the men who live there, many of whom entered the prison in their teens or early 20s and have spent decades behind these walls. In interviews, prisoners describe a mix of regret, resilience, and a profound sense of time slipping away. A man serving life without parole expressed it this way: "You don't realize how precious freedom is until you lose the right to see the sky without permission." Others speak about trying to create meaning inside a place where days blend into years. Some find purpose in religion, peer mentoring, hospice care, educational programs, writing, poetry, art. These small acts of humanity challenge Angola's reputation as nothing but a place of brutality. The Angola Hospice Program, Dignity in a Place Without Hope. One of the most respected programs in the entire U.S. correctional system is Angola's inmate-run hospice program, started in 1999. Because so many Angola inmates are serving life sentences, the prison has a large elderly population. Many will die inside. Instead of dying alone, hospice volunteers provide companionship, bathing and grooming, cleaning, emotional support, bedside presence in the final hours. These volunteers are trained to offer comfort in a place defined by suffering. One inmate caregiver said, "When you can't go home, the least you deserve is not dying alone." This program has received national recognition for its impact, proof that compassion can grow even in the harshest environments. The legal battles, Angola under the spotlight. Despite improvements, Angola faces ongoing lawsuits and federal investigations regarding heat conditions, labor practices in the fields, medical neglect, alleged abuses, solitary confinement practices, treatment of juveniles tried as adults. In 2023, a federal judge ordered the prison to address extreme heat issues that endangered elderly and medically vulnerable inmates. Other suits argue that field labor under armed guard, especially in 100-degree summer heat, violates constitutional protections. These battles highlight a deeper national debate. Should punishment take priority over rehabilitation? Or should rehabilitation take priority over punishment? Angola sits at the center of that question. The culture shift, slow but visible. In recent years, administrators have worked to lower violence, expand mental health care, increase staff training, improve medical facilities, reduce reliance on solitary confinement. While Angola remains dangerous and deeply controversial, many acknowledge that it is no longer the same prison it was in the 1970s or 1980s. But change moves slowly, and for some men too slowly. A place built on history. Angola's biggest challenge is not its location or size. It is its legacy. A prison built on a plantation cannot outrun the shadow of slavery. A prison filled with lifers cannot avoid the weight of hopelessness. And a prison known for violence cannot easily rebuild trust. Yet inside Angola's walls are men trying to change, officers trying to keep order, chaplains trying to give hope, and advocates fighting for reform. The prison story is not finished. It is still being written, day by day, inmate by inmate, decade by decade.